Abilities in the Pokemon TCG basically let you do all the cool stuff. They allow you to attach extra energies to your Pokemon, draw extra cards, place damage counters, search your deck, and otherwise tilt the game in your favor. In 2026, it's not uncommon for decks to activate a handful of abilities each turn, which makes the game pretty combo-oriented. Abilities are generally a good thing, and make the Pokemon Trading Card Game more complex, giving players many ways to manipulate the game each turn. But there's always a balance to find for the game design team. Pokemon is a turn-based game, like chess, and there is no way to interrupt the flow of action during your opponent's turn. So if there are too many ways to combo off, the game can start to feel a bit like solitaire, each player kinda soloing on their side of the board for minutes at a time, while the other player sits and waits to play. Too many abilities makes Pokemon less fun, while not enough abilities can also mean less fun. The game designers at Creatures Inc. understand the need for balance when it comes to abilities in the Pokemon TCG, and have released a bunch of ways to turn them off throughout the game's history. But for years now, it seems like Creatures has been intentionally dialing back the strength of ability denial cards to the point where most of them are just bad. Ability lock in the Pokemon TCG has fallen off big time. So in today's video, I'm going to discuss the golden age of ability denial ushered in by the game's trashiest Pokemon, Garbodor. While we're getting started, I want to give a shout out to my channel sponsor, Full Grip Games. Full Grip has been supporting the content that I create here on Tricky Gym since 2018. Shopping with Full Grip directly supports the content that I create on Tricky Gym. Coming up in March, I'm going to be producing 2 major events hosted by Full Grip Games. On Saturday, March 7th, we've got a Base Fossil Throwback Series event, which should be a lot of fun, playing with old nostalgic cards from the Wizards of the Coast days. And then on March 28th and 29th, we're hosting the Perfect Order Release Weekend $6,000 cash doubleheader. On Saturday, March 28th, we've got the standard 3K with new cards from Perfect Order. Going to be one of the first post-rotation events happening in the country, so really excited about that. And then on Sunday, March 29th, we've got a $3,000 cash Gym Leader Challenge event. Registration is available now at fullgripgames.com. It's never been a better time to plan a trip out to Akron to play some Pokemon cards, and I really hope to see some of you there. If you can't make it, mark your calendars and tune in live on Twitch or YouTube to catch all the action here on Tricky Gym. Garbodor is famous for its Garbotoxin ability, which turns off all other abilities so long as Garbodor has a tool attached to it. And what I love about this card is that there's counterplay built into its design. If you want to counter Garbotoxin, you can play a tool removal card, then use your abilities on the same turn. If players are all teching their decks with tool removal, then Garbodor is less effective. But in an unprepared metagame, Garbodor can dismantle any ability-based strategy. Garbodor was first printed in 2012's Dragon's Exalted expansion, then reprinted in Plasma Freeze and Legendary Treasures. And then it was reincarnated with a different attack in X and Y Breakpoint, which is kind of silly honestly, because Garbodor never attacks.
Come on! Come on!
Well, it's never supposed to attack, so why would they print one with a different attack? It just doesn't make any sense. Garbodor is the definition of a bench sitter. You just slap that dude on the bench, put a tool on it, and do the attacking with somebody else. During the black and white and X and Y blocks, cards didn't have regulation marks, so each time Garbodor was printed, its standard legality reset with it. And consequently, Garbodor had a huge impact on the Pokemon Trading Card Game for the better half of a decade. I feel like Garbodor was legal in one way or another from the time I started playing in 2012 until the pandemic shut things down in 2020. Even after it did eventually rotate out of standard for the 2019 season, it was still played in expanded decks and won the final expanded regional ever held in February of 2020 alongside Trevenant and Dusknoir GX. During its massive window of legality, Garbodor won countless regional championships as well as many national, international, and world championships. It was arguably the most dominant card of the 2010s, constantly reinventing itself and denying abilities across vastly different metagames. Despite being massively successful, Garbodor wasn't a smash hit right away. When Garbodor first premiered in Dragon's Exalted, it was desperately missing something. You see, he's kinda thick, and has a fat retreat cost of 3. And ideally, you don't ever want to put any energy on Garbodor. This guy wants to be on the bench, chillin', and it's extremely not chill if your opponent uses Pokemon Catcher to drag it into the active spot and strand it there. And this play happened all the time, since Pokemon Catcher didn't require a coin flip. There was just item-based Gust with no downside. Back then, you just assumed your opponent was targeting whatever they wanted every turn of the game. Even though it was clunky, Garbodor still saw play with big basic attackers like Landorus EX, Mewtwo EX, and Tornadus EX. To activate Garbotoxin, players used Rescue Scarf or Giant Cape. Rescue Scarf made it so that if Garbodor did get targeted and knocked out, it would return to hand, so you could evolve it later. While Giant Cape made it so that Garbodor had a bit more survivability with 20 more HP. It went this way for about 8 months, with Garbodor decks kinda just being awkward and clunky until Plasma Freeze debuted arguably the best tool card of all time, Floatstone. Floatstone gives the Pokemon it's attached to free retreat, the perfect tool for Garbodor. Not only did Floatstone solve the issue of Garbodor getting stranded in the active spot, it also saved crucial deck space by allowing players to cut switch. With Floatstone in its arsenal, 2 different variants of Garbodor finished in the top 8 of the 2013 World Championships. Dustin Zimmerman, the man who designed the Tricky Gym and Gym Leader Challenge logos, finished 4th with Sableye Garbodor, while Takuya Yoneta finished 5th with Darkrai EX Garbodor. Darkrai EX had officially emerged as the premier attacker to pair with Garbodor. While not as low maintenance of an attacker as Landorus EX or Mewtwo EX, Darkrai EX has access to Dark Patch, item-based energy acceleration that can be recovered with Sableye's Junk Hunt. This makes it easy to power up Darkrai's Night Spear attack multiple times a game. Garbodor did great at its debut World Championships, but it was Jason Klaczynski's non-Garbodor variant of Darkrai EX that ended up winning the World Championships that year. So you had this interesting discussion going on in the community. Was Garbodor actually worth playing? On one hand, Garbodor strengthens your matchups against ability-reliant decks like Electric and Blastoise, but on the other hand, opposing big basic decks that didn't play Garbodor could afford to play more flexible cards, making them favored into Garbodor decks. Darkrai and Garbodor continued to be a strong combination until the following year, when XY base set debuted with unbelievably an even stronger, more low-maintenance attacker than anything that had ever been seen before, Yveltal EX. Yveltal is just a nuts Pokemon. It took everything that was absolutely broken about Mewtwo EX from Next Destinies and did it better, and Mewtwo EX might be the single most immediately impactful card ever released in the Pokemon TCG. Yveltal EX's Evil Ball attack does 20 damage plus 20 more damage for each energy attached to both active Pokemon, and its second attack, Y-Cyclone, passes an energy from Yveltal to one of your bench Pokemon while dealing 90 damage. The 2 attacks on this card pair flawlessly with Garbodor, making Yveltal Garbodor the apex of all big basic Garbodor variants. With Y-Cyclone, you can preserve your energy attachments while fueling attackers on the bench. Then once your opponent has taken a couple of knockouts, you play N to limit their hand to just a couple of cards, lock abilities with Garbotoxin, and swing for huge one-hit KOs with Evil Ball. In 2014, many of the game's biggest strategies relied heavily on abilities. Virizion EX's Verdant Wind ability stops the powerful Hypnotoxic Laser, Pyroar's intimidating main ability prevents it from being damaged by basic Pokemon entirely, Blastoise and Embor's Deluge and Inferno Fandango abilities allow them to rain infinite energy into play. Garbodor had a very successful season in 2014, preventing these abilities. But it wasn't Yveltal Garbodor that won the US National Championships that year. Instead, Brandon Salazar defeated Michael Pramawat's Pyroar deck in the finals with his unique Garbodor Counterbox deck, which played Raichu to hit Yveltal for weakness alongside old favorites Mewtwo EX and Landorus EX. Yveltal Garb still showed up big, however, finishing 3rd at US Nationals and earning a top 8 finish at the World Championships. By this time, players were really wising up to the whole Garbodor thing, and many decks were playing Tool Scrapper. But the next evolution of Garbodor would make Tool Scrapper a non-issue. In the fall of 2014, Seismitoad EX was introduced to the Pokémon TCG in the Furious Fists expansion. Seismitoad EX is a 180 hit point basic Pokémon whose Quaking Punch attack deals 30 damage for 1 double colorless energy and inflicts item lock on the opponent the following turn. When paired with Muscle Band, Verbank City Gym, and Hypnotoxic Laser, Seismitoad can dole out 80 damage a turn while inflicting item lock as early as the first turn of the game for 1 energy. And while the opponent is item locked, they can't play Tool Scrapper. A nasty combination indeed. A combination so nasty that 3-time world champion Jason Klaczynski used it to win the 2015 US National Championships. Following the 2015 World Championships, the Pokémon TCG was finally relieved of Garbodor's grip on Standard, as all of its prints had finally rotated out of legality for the X and Y on format. But that relief only lasted a few months, as Garbodor, like Gandalf the White, returned from the pits of rotation with a fancy new artwork and a new, more expensive attack that nobody would ever use in the Breakpoint expansion, which released on February 3rd, 2016. Garbodor didn't exactly have a triumphant return though. Seismitoad EX was kind of doing its own thing with other, more effective partners like Crobat from Phantom Forces and Giratina EX. Also, Hexmaniac had just been released, which is a supporter that turns off abilities for a turn and can be used throughout the game with the help of Versus Seeker. Hexmaniac is one of the strongest supporters ever printed, and allow players to simultaneously build their decks to be ability reliant while also denying the opponent abilities. With Hexmaniac, you didn't need to commit the deck space of Garbodor to counter your opponent's abilities. Just 1 Hex and a playset of Versus Seeker, which you were probably already playing, and you were good to go. Hexmaniac stole pretty much all of Garbodor's thunder during the 2016 season, but in the summer of 2016, Startling Megaphone and Zoroark, the only tool removal trainers, rotated out of Standard, and for the first time ever, Garbodor was legal in a format without tool removal, and it went crazy. Because there was no regulation marks back then, Yveltal EX was still legal in the Primal Clash On format because it had a bunch of reprints. Yveltal Garbodor, during this time, in this format, is probably the most broken deck I've ever played. Azul won the first regional of the season with Yveltal Garbodor, and leading up to the Fort Wayne Regional Championships that fall, I kept testing against it, and couldn't beat it consistently with anything I had. So, I took Azul's list the night before the event, put a 3rd Parallel City in it because Parallel is broken, and sent it. And I got 2nd place overall to my good friend Jimmy Pendarvis, who outplayed me with the same deck in the finals. Even though I played competitively during Garbodor's entire black and white legality, the deck never clicked with me before. I always preferred to rain extra energy into play with Blastoise or Emboar or Electric. It's probably because I was a newer player and abilities can give you more room for error with your gameplay fundamentals, which made me more comfortable when I was competing. Every game I played at the Fort Wayne Regional Championships, I could see myself growing as a player and learning new ways to think about the game. By its very nature, Garbodor boils the game down to its fundamentals. Without abilities to break the rules, every energy attachment, every promotion, and every attack needs to be correct in order to win. It felt like old school Pokemon TCG, honestly, which was really refreshing. There wasn't a million gameplay actions that players were triggering every turn, and I remember having a ton of fun. Life without tool removal was short-lived, and that's probably for the best. Field Blower was printed in Guardians Rising, but Guardians Rising also featured an insane new buff for Garbodor, Trashalanche. With the introduction of Garbodor from Guardians Rising, the Garbodor line was now multifaceted. Not only did you have the option to turn off abilities with Garbotoxin, you could also punish your opponent for playing too many item cards with Trashalanche, a 1 energy attack that deals 20 damage for each item in the opponent's discard pile. Trashalanche regularly hits 1-hit KO numbers at the end of games, where low energy attacking options are vital. This combination was so potent that Pordrick Lev used his Drampa GX Garbodor deck to win the first ever North American International Championships in the summer of 2017. And would you look who else is there? That's me, 9 years younger and with longer hair, finishing in top 8 with my Drampa GX Zoroark deck that played Hexmaniac to counter abilities and 4 Versus Seeker to recover it. I lost to Sam Chen with his Drampa GX Garbodor deck in a nail biter that came down to a whiff double colorless energy on the final turn of the game. This format, 2017 NAIC Primal Clash to Guardians Rising, is the best competitive Pokemon TCG format I've ever played in. It's peak game design. There are powerful abilities, but also ways to keep them in check. There are powerful item cards, but also ways to keep those in check. Deck construction and gameplay are deep and turns don't regularly go on forever. There are powerful big basic decks, intricate stage 1 decks, and combo-oriented stage 2 decks. There are single prize strategies and multi-prize strategies that all coexist. And many decks rely on a combination of single prize and multi-prize Pokemon to do the attacking. And with the added depth of the newly released GX attacks, there's just so much to appreciate about this format. Garbodor also popped off at the 2017 World Championships with 6 out of the top 8 decks featuring Garbodor. But it was Diego Casiraga who took the World Championship title with his Gardevoir GX deck. At this point, on the world stage, Garbodor had come a really long way since 2012. But it wasn't done evolving yet. Zoroark GX was released in Shining Legends in the fall of 2017 and completely took over the Pokemon TCG. Its trade ability allowed players to see an unprecedented number of cards each turn while serving up a solid attack, Riotous Beating, which could be used for just a double colorless energy. Zoroark GX was a deck builder's dream card. You could pair it with anything and pull off ridiculous combinations with its draw power. Tord went on to win the European International Championships in November of 2017 with his Zoroark GX deck. But for whatever reason, I never gravitated towards Zoroark. I was a Buzzwole guy. Buzzwole GX, released in Crimson Invasion, was probably the strongest basic Pokemon card with the best support ever released at the time. And it was one of the few cards keeping Zoroark GX in check. In December 2017, I played Buzzwole Lycanroc to a top 4 finish at the Memphis Regional Championships, losing in top 4 to Azul's unique Golisopod Garbodor deck. Garbodor was still really good in this format. It turned off Zoroark's Trade, Lycanroc's Bloodthirsty Eyes, Octillery's Abyssal Hand, Gardevoir's Secret Spring, Wonder Tag, and lots of other things. But Zoroark decks were always playing multiple Field Blower, and with Puzzle of Time, it felt like they literally always had access to it. Not to mention, Zoroark GX had 210 hit points and resisted Psychic, so Trashalanche wasn't as strong against Zoroark as it was against other things. After popping off at Memphis with Buzzwole Lycanroc, my testing group and I locked in on Buzzwole for the next couple months. Initially, nobody was really playing Buzzwole with Garbotoxin. Everyone was playing Buzzwole with Octillery and Lycanroc. Then, in early 2018, the Oceania International Championships happened, and I remember sitting there in my small one-bedroom apartment with my girlfriend, now wife, Natalie, and my friends Will Mantho and Riley Hulbert, and we were watching our buddy Frank Persick play in top 8 of the event. He was playing this crazy Buzzwole GX Garbodor deck that didn't run Max Elixir to accelerate energy, but instead just swung with Jet Punch and used Rainbow Energy to power up Trashalanche and Espeon EX to devolve things. It was an unexpected meta call for the event, and I could tell that Frank was onto something. But it wasn't Frank's list that inspired us. The junior finalist, Bodie Robinson, had this incredible list. It had Buzzwole GX, it had Max Elixir, it had Fighting Fury Belt, Garbodor, and a 1-1 Carbink break. We became obsessed with it. The Collinsville Regional Championships were happening in just 7 days, and we were all signed up to go. If we were gonna switch decks last minute, we didn't have a lot of time. So we all put our heads together and started testing Buzzwole Garbodor with Carbink Break. And in just a couple of hours, we landed on a list that we were really excited about. It played a 2-2 Carbink Break, Zygarde EX, and Mismatching Trubbish, just for fun. Carbink Break was the secret sauce though. This card saw zero play before Bodie got second with it at OCIC. Its Diamond Gift attack allows you to attach up to 2 energy cards from your discard pile to one of your bench fighting Pokemon. That includes Strong Energy, which boosts your damage output by 20. So at the end of the game, you could end your opponent to a low hand size, lock abilities with Garbotoxin, and use Diamond Gift to juice up a Buzzwole GX with 2 Strong Energy so that it could Knuckle Impact for game. It was amazing, and one of the most fun decks I've ever played. Collinsville was a huge regional at the time. There were over 1,000 players in attendance, and I had a good time. I finished in the top 32, but Natalie made top 8 with Buzzwole Garbodor after IDing with the 2012 world champion Igor Costa in her final Swiss round. Then she got paired against Gustavo Wada in top 8 and beat his Volcanion deck to advance to top 4. In top 4, she beat a Zoroark Lycanroc player to advance to the finals, where she met 2012 Junior World finalist Ian Robb in his first year as a master. The finals were painfully close, but Natalie had some poor draws and prizes in Game 3 that allowed Ian to emerge victorious. It was an incredible experience to watch this person that I love and playtest with perform at the highest level in the Pokemon TCG and have such a great performance with a deck that we worked on together. It was magical, really. I'll never forget how hard I popped off watching Natalie draw into the strong energy and Guzma she needed off an N2 to beat Pokemon TCG legend Gustavo Wada in Game 3 of top 8. It was crazy. Natalie was so dialed in with this Garbodor deck that she went on to top 16 the Charlotte Regional Championships just a month later. Buzzwole continued to be a popular partner for Garbodor throughout the 2018 season, but ultimately it was Zoroark GX that ended up being Garbodor's perfect match. Stefan Ivanov won the 2018 North American International Championships with Zoroark Garbodor, and Robin Schulz won the 2018 World Championships with Zoroark Garbodor. This final evolution of Garbodor was really cool. You wouldn't necessarily think to pair an ability-reliant Pokemon like Zoroark GX with a card that denies abilities like Garbodor, but the pairing was actually perfect. Remember how I said earlier that it always felt like Zoroark decks have the Field Blower when they need it? You can actually use Field Blower to remove a tool from your own Pokemon. And when you play 3 Field Blower and Puzzle of Time to recover it, you do literally always have access to it. So these Zoroark decks could attack with Zoroark and turn off abilities with Garbodor, then use Field Blower to activate their own abilities again at will. This stop-and-go strategy with self-inflicted ability lock is something that hadn't been done before, and it was really cool to watch. Years later, when Mew VMAX started playing their own Path to the Peak to turn off abilities, it reminded me a lot of these Zoroark GX Garbodor decks from 2018. After 2018 Worlds, Garbodor finally rode off into the sunset and was rotated out of standard format. For good. There have been some ability denial cards printed since, but nothing that turns off all abilities. The golden age of ability denial is gone. Everything that counters abilities now has a clause that usually makes it terrible. Ting-Lu EX, for instance, only stops abilities while it's in the active spot, and only on Pokemon that have damage counters on them. And it doesn't stop Pokemon EX's abilities. Gastrodon, embarrassingly, only works while on the bench and only counters your opponent's Stage 2 abilities while those Pokemon are on the bench. Iron Thorns EX and Path to the Peak are the best ability denial cards that have been released lately, but both of those have limitations as well. Path to the Peak only stops the abilities of Pokemon that have a rule box, while Iron Thorns also only stops abilities of Pokemon that have a rule box and only while it's in the active spot, and also it doesn't block future Pokemon's abilities. Now I know Iron Thorns did win Worlds in 2024, but it hasn't exactly been a meta mainstay. Its world success was more or less a one-off performance and a great meta call. My issue with these Pokemon like Iron Thorns that have to be in the active spot to deny abilities is that you're really limited with your deck building creativity. Like, most Iron Thorns decks only play 4 Iron Thorns because you can't afford to let your opponent break the ability lock with boss's orders. With the general weakness of ability denial, we're definitely living in an ability-heavy era of the Pokemon TCG. And personally, I think it's a bit much. Between Monkey Dory moving damage counters 3 to 4 times a turn, Dracloak, Lunatone, Goldengo, Kangaskhan, and Pheasantipity drawing cards, Pidgeot EX and Noctowl searching things, Dusknoir blowing things up, it feels like players can combo off a little bit too much. I think it's kind of cute that Pokemon is offering up ability counters on a case-by-case basis, like Rocket's Watchtower can stop colorless abilities and Psyduck can stop Dusknoir, but without blanket ability denial, decks can easily just use their other abilities to find answers to the ones that you have turned off momentarily. This isn't 2006 anymore, and I think that decks have too many options to find answers to conditional ability denial. Looking back, Garbodor feels like the perfect balance of ability denial in the Pokemon TCG. It's undeniably strong, but not something that can't be teched against. Garbodor reinvented itself over and over again throughout the years, and in my opinion, is the most impactful card of the 2010s. I think Garbodor is great game design, and I hope that one day, Creatures Inc. lets my smelly friend stink this game up again. So that's my love letter to Garbodor. Thanks so much for watching. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on Ability Lock in the Pokemon TCG, and whether or not you think that blanket ability denial should return to the game. Leave me a comment below to let me know what you think. If you want to hear more Pokemon TCG history and analysis, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. See you next time.